Don't build confidence, build evidence. Confidence comes as a result of evidence, not the other way around. Confidence without evidence is a delusion. It's you beating your chest, looking at yourself in the mirror, trying to pretend you're something you're not. Do it so you get the confidence, but don't think you need confidence to do it. So the whole idea of fake it until you make it should switch to walk it before you talk it, right? Prove it to yourself so you don't need to prove it to other people, and let your path do your talking for you. Until you win, effort always goes unnoticed. Get used to it. If you aren't willing to suck, you're never going to get good. Losers stay losers because they aren't willing to lose. Confidence is also domain specific. So you can be really good at public presentations and really bad at talking to girls. It takes a lot for a skill to transfer between domains. And so if you want to get good at the thing, don't try and do something to the left of it, just do the thing. The first sales consult I ever took, I didn't close. And I say that because everyone just imagines that Mozi just came in just slinging credit cards and stacking bodies, right? It didn't work that way. I came in, it was a 5-minute conversation. The girl was like, I need to go get my card from home. And I said, oh yeah, okay, go do that. And she walked away and I went to my boss. He's like, how'd it go? I said, oh, I closed her. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, you got the credit card? I said, oh no, she's gonna come back with the card. And he literally stopped what he was doing with 6 other guys around him, and they all nonstop laughed for a minute straight. He couldn't breathe because they thought how stupid what I had just said was. But I had no idea. And so that was my first ever experience in sales. I'm known for sales now, and I wouldn't even say I'm confident in sales. It's just more like, this is what works and has worked for me, take it or leave it. And so people perceive that as confidence, but it's simply just based on experience. And confidence comes from experience. What it really is a prediction. What you think is going to will happen. And so even in statistics, what is your confidence metric? This is 0.7, 0.8. It's literally just what the percentage likelihood that what you think is going to happen is going to happen. And so how do you increase the likelihood that what you think is going to happen is going to happen? Have it have happened already. I could have either spent 30 minutes every day looking at myself in the mirror and telling myself I was going to be a great sales guy, or I could have reviewed the fucking script. Which one do you think would make me a better salesperson? Reviewing the script. You can take all the time that you're trying to spend psyching yourself up, and you'll feel significantly more confident not having done that and simply knowing what you're going to say, which you get from practice. The world belongs to those who can keep doing without seeing the result of their doing. And the longer you can wait to see the result of your doing while still continuing to do is the extent to which you can win big in life. For example, to be a top 1% podcaster, you have to upload 21 podcasts. 21, top 1%. 90% of people don't get past 1. 9% don't get past 20. And then 1% of podcasters, of all of them, make it to 21 plus. So when people say try harder, it usually just means don't give up. The price for excellence has never been so low. People give up so easily now that it's just so easy to win by just being willing to post 20 times. You're in the top 1%. Like, I'm at the top 1%. We're not even talking 10, top 1%. People are so afraid of being humiliated. They get the long-term humiliation of never amounting to anything. No one's gonna watch your first 20 episodes anyways, and even if they do, it doesn't matter because that's not what you're building towards. You posting those 20 isn't what you judge yourself on. You should be judging yourself on the difference between your first one and your 20th one. Are you better? Probably. And the difference between your 20th one and your 100th one, because the win is you are the asset you're building, not the downloads that you get on your first shot. Mozi immediately had a podcast with millions of downloads every single month. No, I spent 4.5 years making 2 podcasts a week straight, didn't miss. And guess how many podcast downloads I was getting per month at the end of that? 2,000 to 3,000 downloads a month. Not a lot. I used to think to myself, okay, well, each one of these podcasts gets like 200 downloads. Well, 200 downloads is like an auditorium of people. And so would I feel okay giving a speech to 200 people? Yeah. And even before that, when there was getting like 10 or 15 downloads per episode, if I had a little lunch and learn that I used to have to do to like get leads for a business, I'd be fine talking to a group of 10 or 15 people, because the reality is that those people are doing me more of a favor than I'm doing them. They're literally giving me their ears so that I can practice my voice and how to talk and how to present. And it was only at year 4.5 to 5 when things started taking off. And you know what the 2 things that changed are? One is I changed it from gym secrets to just the game, which was a business thing, so it made it more applicable to more people. And the second thing, and here's the real one, is that I sold a company for $46 million. And so people were like, oh, what does this guy have to say? And the big thing that everyone misses is people try and dissect my content. The message is 10% of how people consume it. 90% is the context around the message. So Elon Musk can tweet on the toilet and be like, I'm on the throne taking a shit, and it'll get 1 million likes. Why? Because it's Elon Musk and he's the richest man in the world and owns 3 of the biggest companies that are most innovative of all time. I don't kid myself and think that like my content is so much better than other people. There's plenty of people with better content than me that don't get the same views. And the reason is because they don't have the context. They don't have the proof. And solve for the proof, and then the content will take care of itself. Because one, you will know what you're talking about because you have proof that you know what you're talking about, and people will believe you. Which is why you should solve for evidence above everything else. Like, evidence gives you the confidence. If someone says, Alex, I don't think you know shit about business, I'd be like, okay, it doesn't really affect me. I do know we crossed $100 million in net worth at age 32. I know that. But if someone said that to you and you haven't accomplished anything, you don't have anything to stand back on, and it hurts you more. But I have proof. So it's like, you can just deflect it towards the proof and keep living your life. The secret to longevity is, especially in the content game, but really in any game that you're trying to at least help other people with, is that if you've done the thing, you can be certain rather than confident. Be certain based on what you've done, not based on what you say other people should do. Measure yourself by how much work he puts into one of his shorts versus what you put into one of your shorts. And then you might think the output is more reasonable. And if there's a top sales guy in your organization who's making more money than you, compare not what his commission check is to yours every month, compare how many calls he's making, how many times he practices the script, how many calls he's made before you, how many sales he's closed before you, what time of day he shows up at work, what time of day he leaves, whether he works weekends or not, whether he's willing to hop on the phone in a family context so that he can still close the deal. If you're doing all the inputs, the outputs will always match on a long enough time horizon. And if you are new to the game, then my recommendation is not only to match inputs, but to double or triple the inputs that someone ahead of you is doing. And the reason you do that is because if you just match your inputs, then you're always gonna be behind them because they're already ahead of you because they're better than you. And so if you both do the same amount of work, they're gonna keep getting better and so are you. So you have to do twice the work. You gotta be like Kobe, right? Where everyone else is doing 1 practice a day, you do 2 practices a day. And in the beginning, they'll be better than you. And then you'll match them. But because you're doing twice the work, eventually you'll get better, and then that's how you win. Yeah, and one of the biggest misnomers in whatever endeavor you're trying to track is people track the wrong metrics. They track the lagging metrics rather than the leading metrics. Lagging metrics are what happened. Those are the outputs. And if you want to track those, fine. But the real things to track are what you're doing to create the outputs. So I don't want to necessarily even track sales. I want to track how many calls I'm making. If I'm trying to get in shape, I'm not necessarily gonna track the weight I'm doing, I'm gonna track how many calories I'm eating. And so the more ways you measure, the more ways you can win. And so the idea, the ultimate win at life is where you can shift things that are out of your control that you deem winning to things that are under your control, which you can deem winning. Because if you're measuring on whether you lost the fat or not, sometimes people take longer, some people don't. That's something that you actually can't control. What you can control are the inputs. And so if you say, based on this, if I do this one thing every day for a long enough period of time, I'll eventually get there. The real winners cut out the I'll eventually get there and say, if I do this every day, I have won. The thing that I try and focus on now is the delta between how hard I tried and how hard I can possibly try. And if I know that the gap between those two is 0, then I have won. And I've decided to spend an inordinate amount of effort trying to make that my definition of winning, is that there's nothing left in the tank. If you get into a harder career path or one that takes more reps to get good at or more reps to get into, then every day you can win based on saying like, everyone else does 100, I do 250, and I have nothing left to give, I won. And that should satisfy you. And if you're an external thing, that takes too long and you will give up too soon. One of the things that took me too long to learn was the difference between the finite and infinite frame. And so finite frame is where you have known players, agreed upon rules, and a way to win or lose at the end, and then the game is over. In infinite frame, you have known and unknown players, no agreed upon rules, and the point of the game is to keep the game going. And all the greatest games that I've ever participated in, marriage, health, business, you don't win at marriage. The point is to stay married. You don't win at health, the point is to stay in shape. You don't win at business, the point is to stay in business. And so by default, if you don't give up, you win. And so that's the big frame shift, which is why leaving everything on the field is the way you have to define winning if you want to win in the long term. And anything worth doing takes great time. If you stick with it and you make that the win, you'll notice that the external win will just happen on its own. And if you really commit to that perspective, it won't even mean much to you. Because if you make that everything, it's the same thing with the guys who win the golds and then kill themselves or win the championship and then go to these massive depressions. It's because they're playing the wrong game. When Kobe was asked shortly before he died, like, do you think that you're somebody who's afraid of losing, or do you think you're somebody who loves winning? He basically denied both frames. He said, I'm paraphrasing, I just love playing to the best of my ability. And that's what he measures himself off of. The fact that the world chooses to measure him on the fact that he's won so many games, that's the world's problem, not ours. It's saying, I'm game master, not a player, and I choose to play by these rules, and as long as I am playing, I win by default. And it's because I'm not accepting the world's rules for winning, I make my own. An easier analogy here is, and this is a Naval Ravikant quote, he said, what looks like work to other people should feel like play for you. If you look at an artist and he's painting, you're like, hey, how soon are you gonna finish that painting? The point for the artist is to paint. He'll finish that piece and he'll start the next one. But the process of painting is the thing that they enjoy. And so the idea is that if you can commit, and the broader you can generalize what you're committing to, the easier it will be to stick with it. So you might be like, I love making calls, but I hate entering things in the CRM. Well, both of those are required for the role of sales. And so I prefer to chunk up a level and say, I prefer to do hard work because of what that work does to me. Then whether I'm putting shit into the CRM or editing a document or having a hard conversation, all of those things are difficult, and I see those as all contributing to the person I ultimately want to be until eventually I die and it won't matter anyways. And so the only asset that you really get to keep with you is your character, and that's the only thing you keep building. And so if you make the character the W, at the end of the day, did I not contribute to the character of the person that I want to become? If that's the W every day, you can never lose. If you have your menu option of things that you can do in life, just remove quitting as one of them and then try your next idea. And if you are in that rocky cutscene and you're 2 months in, 3 months in, remember that the rocky cutscene in the movie lasts a couple seconds and the rocky cutscene in real life might last a few years. And so whenever I get to a low point where I think, why do I even bother doing this? I just like to remind myself, this is where most people stop and this is why they don't win. And as hard as this is going to sound, the best thing that I ever did was not listen to other people's opinions about my life. They don't want the best version of you. They want the version of you who best serves them. And unfortunately, the closer people are to you, the more similarly they'll see themselves and you, and the more your success will make them feel bad about themselves. And I can promise you this from somebody who might be a little further, I have more people who root for me now that I've already won than people who rooted for me along the way. No one is doing as well as you think they're doing. So by comparison, everyone is better off than they think, because the cumulative median visually is probably 3 times higher than what the actual median is. And so if you're like, oh, I'm average or slightly below average compared to the perceived median of society, you're probably way above average. And that's okay. And being above or below average doesn't even matter anyways, because you've got a lot of innings left. There's a lot of quarters left to play. And so like until the day you die, you still have hope, you still have a chance, you can still keep moving forward. Whenever someone gives you their opinion about what you should do with your life, it's really them saying, this is my preference of how I want to live my life. And I say, great, live your life that way and I'll live my life this way. Because me living my life has no effect on you. So live your life the way you want to live it. And I don't want your life either. They make those statements because they feel uncomfortable. And so they have to like release it. And so they say that to you to make themselves feel better. And that's their problem, not yours. I think I've learned a lot of frames around not caring about other people's opinions out of necessity, because I was so crippled by the opinions of other people for what felt like such a long time that I always had to face my death in order to get myself to move. And so I talk about death a lot because it has actually been one of the few things that actually motivates me to change my behavior. And so when I had done all the things that I thought would impress other people, one, I realized that they didn't really care. And secondly, I realized that I deeply cared about how much I hated my life. When I was like, is this what winning feels like? Because if this is what winning is, then I don't want to play. By thinking I'd rather be dead than continue to play this game, I was forced to change the game I was playing, which was like, well, what is a game that I would like to win at? Well, I'd like to win a game that is by rules that I set out and they're things that I can control. And then those people, because you break their mold of what they're supposed to be doing, and they might be miserable too, but they are not willing to take the risk that you're willing to take because they care about other people's opinions more than you do because they haven't gone through that little journey that you just went through, fine. You do it your way, they do it their way. I mean, I went from prodigal son, my father's super proud of me, graduating Vanderbilt in 3 years, president of the fraternity, vice president of the powerlifting team, management consultant, to a minimum wage employee. Like, that's a pretty significant drop in status. I have these frames because people will say whatever they want, but for me, that relative drop in status was a lot. I went from about as high status as you can get as a 22-year-old to about as low status as you can get. I mean, I remember having people be like, so did you go to college? And I was like, yeah, I went to college and I fucking murdered it and I did everything. And because the implied question is, why are you here? And so that's what, in the beginning, hurt a ton. But then I just realized that they just didn't know. And they were asking genuinely. And all of my judgment around that was just my own problem. How I'm perceiving this question is affecting my mood to such a great degree. What if I applied this to every question? All these people are asking me things and I'm either getting offended or getting complimented, but the statement doesn't change. So that sounds like a me problem. And so the more I started diving into things like that, the less bothered I became by everyone else's opinion, because they also have no context. Even if they did mean it as an insult, so what?